Hi everybody, and welcome to this Friday session, Women in Recruitment. Today, a bit of a switch around. We're joined by Natasha Clarke. Hopefully you'll know Natasha. Natasha's normally sat in my position, well she has been for the last, is it 4 or 5 months we're getting into now, hosting these Friday sessions. But the table is turned, and today is the opportunity to hear from Natasha, hear from the woman herself and hear about her career journey. And hopefully she'll pass on some really good kind of hints and tips and give you real insight into some of her experiences. My name's Jo Major. I work for APSCo and I also support women in recruitment. So thanks for everybody for joining in. So I met Natasha now when I started with APSCo about 6 months ago, and I kind of, after a few meetings and hearing her speak and getting to know her a little bit more, I kind of wondered, wow, who is this woman? I can't believe that I've been in the recruitment industry for 20 years and our paths have never crossed. I think I was really missing out, to be honest. And now we've connected. Natasha's been really supportive over my journey and starting with APSCo. So Natasha, thank you for that. And I have to say, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you. I'm really interested in in hearing more about your journey and your career. It's a real honour to get to interview you. I thought I would just highlight a few points because you're probably not going to go all out there and tell us about all these amazing things you've done, but I wanted to get in there and do that first. So a couple of points that I've learned about Natasha over the last 5 months. She's got a super impressive recruitment career behind us, a real story, a real journey, an absolute expert in her field. She's really passionate about changing things, really driven by things like inclusion, mental health and culture. And has had some incredible success in those areas. So anybody who's been lucky enough to work for any of the businesses that Natasha's worked in will have been able to experience the impact of her work. She is actually a founding member of Women in Recruitment, and a lot of the work that she's done has been around recognising women in recruitment and in industry, and she's actually, her work at S3 was recognised by the Times top 50 employers for women, where they actually singled out Natasha as being instrumental in making those changes. Natasha is a woman who elevates other women and she makes them feel good about themselves, and it's so wonderful when you meet a woman like that. And one thing that I do notice when anybody ever actually talks about Natasha, they always seem to put the word wonderful in front of your name. And I just think that's, I just wanted to acknowledge that it's not just me who, really appreciates getting to know you over the last, 5 months. It's evident across the industry that anybody who's worked with you or knows you feels the same. So thank you for that. So hopefully I've embarrassed you enough now.
Thank you, gosh, that's lovely to hear, and yeah, that's really pulled at my heartstrings. So thank you.
Okay. So I mean every word of it. So I thought we could start off by, I'll start off by asking you, could you give us a bit of a kind of overview of your career for anybody who's not, who doesn't know you or hasn't got an understanding of your background? Can you tell us a little bit about your career journey?
Yeah. Okay, so I started off in recruitment in 1993, I think it was, or 94, after seeing a tiny little 3 by 3 centimetre advert in the Evening Standard, and applied to it.
A newspaper?
And applied for that, really not knowing what to expect. But before I knew it, I bounced around about 20 interviews. I don't think too many things have changed since then, but yeah, bounced around about 20 interviews, and ended up being taken on by Sunil Wicknamaratne, who was my first boss at Progressive Recruitment. And when I joined, I was actually the only female joining on the sales floor. I was one of about, I think, 10 consultants at the time. The office was small. The most important thing in the office was the fax machine and the filing cabinet that held every single CV of every candidate that you worked for. And that's
I remember those days.
Yeah, it was very different, wasn't it? And so I was absolutely privileged to work for a company where I just felt that I could, where I landed on my feet actually and did something that I found myself to just be really good at. I had no idea I would be, but it just worked for me. I enjoyed the job, I enjoyed the people I worked with, and very quickly I became the top recruiter in the whole of the well, it wasn't S3 at the time, but in the group of companies that existed, which was Computer Futures and Progressive. And after 3 years, I was asked if I would set up the 4th brand for the group. Gary Oldham had just set up Huxley. I then set up Pathway, and I ran Pathway for 11 years, had 2 children while I was doing that, and reached a point where I felt my career needed a bit of a change. I had a number 2 who was very keen to develop and move up, and I got offered a position to work with the Chief Strategy Officer, which was what Gary was then, and the CEO, on a number of projects which ranged from rationalising support services, creating efficiencies across the group, setting up international offices, and really helping develop a more structured approach and lean approach to the business, because at this point we'd now floated and the demands to drive value.
I was going to say, you must have seen a lot of change in that business during your time there.
Yeah. And then I was asked by the board to take over the people function. We'd had a HR function that was very transactional in terms of its HR impact. And I think from my own point of view, having been through the business and understanding it so well, the opportunity to come in and actually create the capability within the people to deliver the strategy was really exciting, particularly because at that point of time as well, I'd also got myself involved in really being responsible for the strategic planning cycle in the business and applying some structure and thought process and breaking down complexity to create tangible plans and actionable plans that could be delivered. And so I had a very varied career there, which was fabulous because it gave me exposure to so many things. And it created the opportunity then, I think, for me to leave with a very holistic perspective of running not only a private company, but also what it's like to be in a PLC.
So from actually being a recruiter, going on a complete journey to actually leading that people piece. What a great career journey with them.
Thank you. Yeah, I was very lucky. I mean, I think one of the questions you and I talked about was, you know, is there anything that I would have changed about my past? And a number of people have said to me, oh, well, you stayed at S3 for 25 years. And a number of times I stopped and thought, do I need to leave? Because am I institutionalized here? And am I not learning enough and developing enough? But actually, on reflection, I think staying with the opportunities I had was the right thing to do, because I could have the biggest amount of impact because I knew the business inside out. But because I was moving through different departments and working with different people, particularly that had come in from other industries, you know, the CFO, for example, other people with more functional expertise, I was learning on that journey, and I could have done it somewhere else, but I wouldn't have that knowledge.
Yeah.
So
I think when you've got those opportunities internally to look at other roles and other professions within your business, often there's not a reason to move out.
That's right.
And if you've got people continually coming into the business that you can learn from, and you've got opportunities to develop expertise and move into such a big role, that kind of head of people, that it's you know, that gives you a really good platform for the next chapter, doesn't it?
That's right, and it keeps it fresh and interesting. And I think for me, one of the most important things is always about continuous personal development and making sure I didn't become a dinosaur.
And being aware of that.
And therefore those changes allowed for my ability to own my own development and not, you know, and to really think about my journey and what I needed to do to make myself fit for each change along the way.
Is there anything that you would change career-wise? Have you ever had an opportunity put in front of you and you think, oh gosh, I wonder what would have happened if I'd have gone down that path?
To be honest with you, not really, Jo, on the basis that I feel so privileged to have had the career that I have had. And No, not really. However, I have learned that there would have been some things I might have done more of. I definitely think it took me a long time to realise how important networking was, and building my own personal networks that I could turn to either for support or for knowledge and experience, or, as when it did happen, did leave, that would help me then on my next journey. And it was probably only about 10 years ago that I really thought, my goodness, I've not done any of this, and I'm probably missing out significantly on an opportunity in all of these areas. That's when I really think, put my head down and thought, I consciously got to make an effort. It's because so many of us don't want to do it, or don't particularly like the thought of having to get out there and create connections.
Yeah, it's out of your comfort zone, isn't it? Especially if you're really busy looking inward into your company. Yeah. You've really got to invest that time, haven't you, to build an external network, especially an external network that's going to help elevate your career and, you know, be a sounding board externally.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would always say to people that that is something I would have started to have been conscious about a lot earlier.
So that's top tip number one. I mean, I'm sure you've had a lot of these, but in terms of your, you know, your proudest moment, that point that you will always remember, can you tell us about that? Hopefully you've got one. I'm sure you've got plenty.
One actually that I might just have to share with you. I think it'd be really wrong of me not to say that my APSCo award was very significant.
Absolutely.
It recognised, I can't quite remember actually what the award is, but the Impact in the Industry award, I think, a couple of years ago. That was great recognition for the fact that I had been seen to have made a difference, not just to people in S3. But you mentioned earlier the top employers for women. We were the first recruitment company to get into the top 50 employers. And that for me was a very proud moment. And then some more personal things, actually, when people say to me, you really made a difference to the culture, and I'm only here because of the changes you brought about, and if I hadn't had you around, or you hadn't done the things you've done, I wouldn't still be here, and my career wouldn't have continued to where I am today. And that makes me feel really proud and happy, and yeah, all those lovely warm things we get.
It's sometimes, isn't it, that kind of thing, when somebody gets in touch with you and tells you the impact that you personally had on their career, that really resonates, isn't it? That sometimes feels better. It makes you feel prouder than some, you know, the awards, the glossy stuff.
Yeah, it's absolutely right, because you know that, well, effectively, I suppose you've changed a life, or you've done something that has given someone else perhaps the same opportunity that someone else had given you. Yeah, I agree.
I think sometimes, and also as recruiters, we underestimate the impact that we have on people. I mean, I don't know about you, but I get emails every now and again from people that I supported 15 years ago into their career, and I'm like, gosh, you know, you've placed a lot of people, and you know, they still remember you as that touch point.
What I think was interesting, Jo, back then when we started, was that nobody really talked about this role as having purpose beyond making money. And that's been a shift over, I think, the last few years, that I think there's a greater awareness now, and a greater focus on what we do in this industry as being impactful from a human perspective, rather than just what a great industry to earn a brilliant salary. Because years ago, you went into recruitment quite often when you were in the recruitment you and I know, rather than sort of in-house type recruitment. But certainly it was very much around, it's a sales career, that's where you go if you want fast track careers and to earn a lot of money quickly. Whereas today, perhaps there's as you said, there's a bit more awareness around actually making a difference to people's lives. And I think bringing that thinking and thought process in is good, because it actually starts to create a different value set around how people's work treat the role.
Yeah, and it's a lot of responsibility as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I didn't mention at the beginning, if anybody's got any questions at all for Natasha, please feel free to pop them in chat. I can bring them in during our conversation, or I can answer them at the end. Sorry about that. So lots and lots of good stuff there. Naturally, I'm going to ask you about the challenges. We've all had them. But what do you think is one of the biggest challenges that you've had during your career in recruitment? And most importantly, how did you overcome it?
I think that probably one of the toughest times I had was when I just had my first child, and my number two, who was meant to be running the business for me in my absence, turned up a week after I'd come out of hospital, telling me he was going to leave. And I was like, okay, timing's great, thanks. And that just felt like, oh my goodness, I've got this newborn baby, and I've got my other baby, which is my business, and how am I going to tackle this one? And luckily, actually, I had a really fabulous team in the company who stepped up, took responsibility, gave me 3 months before I came back, and I had touch points with them, and they really stepped up while I was out. And I think that just shows again the value of creating those strong individuals behind you, and a strong leadership team that has capability but also has responsibility and is happy to take that on when they get the opportunity. So I'm very grateful to them for that.
Yeah, but you know, I guess that wouldn't have happened if you were in, you know, you put yourself in that position where you trusted other people. I think naturally as recruiters we can sometimes be slightly on the control side of things, but to be able to, as a senior leader, to be able to, in your absence, trust people, that's, you know, that can be really significant. It can help a lot, right?
And manage from a distance, I suppose, and feel that if you can create clarity and just be there when you're needed, you know, when somebody's really, really needing support and direction. And I guess with working from home now, that's perhaps going to become something that people are more comfortable with anyway. But yeah, being distant, but still having touch points.
Yeah, the sign of a good manager. So this is a bit of a random question, but it's I really wanted to ask you it because I do think that as somebody, I can imagine that that, you know, doing some of the work that you've done, especially around culture and the people and the D&I piece, it's not always the easiest thing to influence and change within a sales setting, within a sales business. Have you ever been misunderstood at work?
Yeah. Plenty of times.
I'm asking you because this is going to make me feel better about myself. Yeah,
do you know, it's really interesting that years ago, people used to say to me, "You're so professional," and you're just, I think they just thought I was really cold and really stiff and very unapproachable and quite scary. And I just could not understand why people would say to me, "You're just scary."
I could never imagine that.
Yeah, I'm not even 5 foot. How can I be scary? But I think I probably tried a bit too hard to maintain this sort of professional outlook and approach, and I perhaps lost a bit of sight as to who I was, and maybe I didn't feel comfortable at the time to be me and to relax into being me and to have that more human side come out. And I did find that once I allowed myself to do that, after I'd heard this a few times and the penny dropped, I needed to do something. I did feel as though it changed the way people responded to me for the better, actually. And it was little things like, I used to remember, God, years ago, I don't know if you remember, Next used to do pinstripe lady suits.
I had one.
The only brown, did a petite version that fitted me. And I look back now and think, gosh, how austere was that? And how cold would that have looked? And so I did, one of the things I did was made a conscious effort to wear dresses and colour. And it was amazing that the impact and me sort of softening my appearance had.
Yeah, interesting.
People responded to me. Yeah.
Yeah, really, really good points. I mean, it's really interesting what you say about that kind of persona and how, I'm going to sound old now, but 20 years ago, as a woman in recruitment, you pretty much, you dressed like a man. You had a suit on, you had a shirt on, maybe a heel, but yeah. So that, yeah, I can see how, and especially if you're in that leadership role, that can be quite intimidating, especially in today's culture.
Yeah, and I think it's how your mind works, isn't it? I mean, I think a lot of us feel like we need to put our work clothes on to feel in a work mood, or we used to before lockdown, but equally I think putting on that pinstripe suit just made you then feel more like your male counterparts, and perhaps that's why we started to behave a bit more like them.
And I think now people want to see that authentic side of leaders. They want to see that. I've read a lot recently about showing vulnerability and the importance, especially if you're in that leadership role. So, you know, I can imagine. I mean, I've been there myself, where, you know, you feel that you have to fit a certain personality to lead a team. But actually, if you just continue, make sure that you don't lose yourself in that process and your personality. And,
yeah. And I mean, the other thing I like to do is to hug people. Thankfully, that's not got me in trouble. I always had to be mindful.
No hugging now, though. Lovely. Okay, great. So, I mean, you've done a lot. I know that you're really passionate about the culture and especially, you know, that D&I piece. We've spoken, and we've had you on panels where we've spoken about diversity and inclusion. Still, you know, it's not going away. Very, very topical. What really drives you? What was the kind of, you know, was there a particular moment where you thought, this is something that I need to learn more about? You know, this is an area that I can really change and drive change.
I'm going to talk about a couple of things here, if you don't mind, because there's a piece of advice or learning I'd like to share with the audience, because I found it come up in conversation a number of times with people, and it was a tactical trigger that got me into this space. The trigger to getting interested in culture and D&I was the fact that I was often the only woman in the room, and I started to get a bit questionable around why no other women in the company were ever making it kind of to the seat next to me. And then, having been in HR and looking after HR, getting access to data and seeing how many women were exiting and the churn rates of women versus men, that became the trigger point to get me to start questioning and understanding. And of course, I'd always experienced the culture that was in the business I was in, and I hadn't always liked it, but I kind of just put up with it because I was able to. But it was that moment where I just had this, I think it was when the Davies report came out as well, it really got me thinking, and looking around me, I could just see we had a problem, and that was the trigger. Then I realised that, I think that was about the time as well that I was starting to think, well, where's my career going, and what am I famous for? And okay, I've been a great recruiter, but how am I developing myself to be more than just Natasha, who was great at recruiting and has worked for S3 for quite a long time, and S3, what a great company. Well, that didn't really do it for me. I was starting then to think as well that I want something I can hang my hat on. Not with recruitment, not having qualifications that are sort of recognised externally. I'd always felt a bit, you know, I'm not a qualified HR professional. I'm not a qualified, you know, recruitment's not a qualified role. You're as good as your performance. I felt a bit unhinged that I didn't have anything that I could hold myself to account on and say, this is who I am, and this is what I'm an expert in. And I decided then that actually it was my purpose to develop that for myself. One, to protect my career, because I knew at some point that I would outgrow the company I was with, and they'd outgrow me. And I wanted to protect myself, to give me some choices when that moment came. Also to give me that personal development opportunity, and to help me build my network that I decided at that point wasn't really there. And do something then that I thought, gosh, really, really needs doing. And it's so compelling. I don't have to work too hard at the business case for this, because it just speaks for itself. And that's where it all came from. And I've often said to people who have got a moment in their career where they're just feeling a bit lost and undirected, that if you can find something like I found this subject where I could really own it and I could really get behind it and drive it and feel proud to be taking on something that desperately needed addressing, but where then I could really allow myself to become buried in it and an expert in it, that was really like career changing for me, because it gave me a sense of purpose, it gave me a sense of direction, a sense of value. And that's what's fueled me then to continue to want to learn more about the whole concept of inclusion and in the workplace and culture, and just understanding what's going on in the world around us and how people interact together and how you get the best out of people. And it's not just at work, it's in the communities you live in, it's in your network of friends. And now it drives me because I've really got to understand how deep the problem is. And over lockdown with Black Lives Matter, I actually really had another light bulb moment. I started to talk to my friends that come from minority groups and who experienced growing up as people of colour in the 70s. And I was just flabbergasted by the things I didn't know about some of my friends' experiences, and now what they're still experiencing in the workplace. And that's continuing to make me realise that this is an important subject matter, and more people like yourself, like APSCo, like me, that talk about it, create an understanding and educate people around it. And the more we learn, we'll slowly start to make some differences and chip away at a problem that's going to take a long time to address, but we have to take small steps to begin to make change.
Where do you feel we're at as a sector? How are we evolving in this space?
Well, I think you'll recall when we moved into the industry, as we said, about 25, 30 years ago, it was a very different place. I think today, from the good work that people like yourselves have done, APSCo and myself, others that have stepped up, and there've been some really good initiatives undertaken by companies in our industry. There is definitely a better understanding now and an acceptance that we can't just push this under the table. I think we're in a place now where we can challenge around this subject matter in a way that I don't think 20 years ago we'd have been able to challenge leaders in the way we can today. And the topic's out there. And it wasn't 20 years ago. So for me, the fact the topic's out there, we're talking about it, people are trying to make a difference, people are keen to learn from each other. We know we're not going to fix this overnight. Years of social conditioning behind this. But for every single person that steps forward and tries to do something positive on this agenda, then we're one step closer to hopefully where we want to be.
I agree. It almost feels like we're at the beginning now of a real step change, and like you said, it's culture, D&I. It's not an overnight thing. It's not like bringing in a policy that's going to change everything. It's as one of my managers said to me, and I'll always say it's not just flicking a switch and everything's how you want it to be in the world. It's about changing the dial, and like you said, turning the dial. And like you said, there's a lot more out there. You can challenge in a more educated way, because it's difficult to challenge when you don't feel like you have a right to challenge, or it's difficult to challenge when you don't feel like an expert. But there's lots and lots and lots of insight and education out there, isn't there? And as I said, it feels quite exciting, I think, for anybody who's really interested in culture. Inclusion, right now it's important to really to get involved in it and step up and try and take a lead in your business or wherever you are.
That's right. I think it's about owning it and not passing it over to be somebody else's problem, because actually we all own it, because we all contribute to the culture wherever we are. So to say it's always management's problem, or to say it's always HR's problem, is not really very helpful. Of course, you need sponsorship and support from senior people and the functions that help implement some of the changes. But I think we all have to say we can all do our bit to own the issue and take some responsibility for it.
So you've done a lot of work throughout the years focusing on gender and women in recruitment and doing what you can to elevate women within our industry. So I'm going to ask you, what would you, if you were talking to somebody who wasn't in the industry, what do you feel are, the top reasons to be a woman in the recruitment industry? What are the best bits?
Earlier, the role has real purpose. So being in the recruitment industry, whatever you do, what we do as an industry really does change lives if you follow the journey of a CV and really think about them as a candidate. It has real purpose. I think the industry, from my own experience, if you work for the right company, you can have a really varied career. And I think we learn so many skills in this sector and in this type of role that we've done that is transferable outside. I mean, we learned how to negotiate, how to influence, how to present. We learn contractual skills, business skills. I mean, we really build up a terribly strong skill set when you're a recruitment consultant.
I agree.
And I think recognising that is very valuable, and being able then to put those things in your toolkit and realise what you're capable of and where you can take that. And then I also think women are really good at this job. And I've studied the data. The stats say women actually do outperform men as recruitment consultants. And therefore, why would you not want to do something you could be really good at? Inherently, female traits work in this industry, more so now. And statistically, I know for a fact that women do or perform better. And therefore, why would you not?
Why would you not? Is there any other options out there? Obviously, it comes with its challenges. What would you say are very, very current challenges that we need to work on, but are still there as a woman in this industry?
I mean, I'm not sure our challenges are much different to many other industries, to be fair. I think we're some way further along on this whole journey around culture, which is great. It is still, though, male dominated at the top, and women in recruitment, we're trying to change that. Many organisations are now recognising that and trying to implement things that will change that. There are still a number of organisations that I come across that I just don't think have embraced that there's a problem at all. And so, again, the more we can do to highlight facts and create the business case, or show them the business case for change. So, I mean, it's no different to any industry sector. We've got a way to go still, but we've started the journey, and we are somewhere along the line, which is great. But yes, still very male dominated at the more senior end, and we need to keep at that. And some of that's because as women in the industry, we need to stay, and we need to take these challenges on and rise to the top, and not be put off and not give in. So it's a little bit around organisations becoming better equipped to support women, and also about women making a choice to say, I'm going to stay and confront this, and I'll be part of the change.
And what kind of advice do you give to women in recruitment that are looking to get into that senior management position?
Well, I think, like we said, it's about taking ownership of your development. It's around building your networks within the company, getting sponsorship from people that are influencers within the business you work in. I think, again, I felt that knowing what you're good at and not being scared to then promote what you bring to the table that's either unique about you or where you know you've got real strength, and giving yourself the opportunity to demonstrate that and then promote that, so that you can build your personal brand. And we do sometimes, I think, have to work harder at this. Unfortunately, at the moment, I still think that there's a little extra percentage effort we have to make to get to the top. That's just how it is at the moment. Hopefully it will change, but if that's the case, how do we then make sure we stand out that little bit more than the next perhaps male around us.
Do you think it's always useful to have a sponsor within your business, or somebody that mentors you, that's at that top table?
Yeah, I mean, I think sponsors at the top table are absolutely critical, because they're the ones that speak for you when you're not there. A mentor can be incredibly helpful from the perspective of giving you confidence and helping you take the right actions to position yourself in the right way. But yeah, as I said earlier, I think sponsorship and finding sponsors within the business that you know that can throw your name out there or refer to you when those conversations you need to be heard in come out. And
of course, joining Women in Recruitment.
Of course, it goes without.
It goes without saying. Fabulous. Okay, great. Just to remind everybody, if you've got any questions, please do put them in chat, and I'll put them to Natasha. So, Natasha, I've been reading quite a lot about obviously keeping inspired, looking after yourself kind of mentally, keeping yourself well, especially, over the last few months. And it's been very topical, lots of conversations about it. And we all have different things that I'm sure we do to make sure that, we're keeping ourselves mentally and healthy. But what makes you feel, what gives you drive, what makes you feel inspired? What gives you, I guess, the opportunity to give this like the best version of yourself?
I think where I get real inspiration is from working with other great, passionate people. I mean, you were very gushy about me earlier. I'm going to be a bit gushy about you now. You saved me over lockdown with these webinars.
By getting you booked up every Friday.
But the opportunity to come in and interview some outstanding people and just really, really hear some more stories about what's achievable was so incredibly inspiring, and seeing you pushing forward in a time of challenge to make something happen that our members would really benefit from. And I think just when you work with a great team of people, I get huge amounts of energy from that, and I think I live off positive energy that drives me. And I've got some of my clients are just fantastic. We work together, we get through things get done, they happen, I get a big thank you, and you just want to do more of it. But I think, helping others succeed, helping others make a difference, helping others feel in a good place is really rewarding. But you touched on this piece around being your best self and mentally managing your health. And that is so important. And, I know that from my own personal experience, since I've been very lucky to work with Rhonda D'Ambrosia on the mental health in recruitment over lockdown as well. And she's been doing a fantastic job on really trying to raise awareness of that in the industry. But for me, I always remember going on a development course and someone saying to me, shut your eyes and just think about where you felt most in flow. Where did you just feel the most contentment in who you were? And I knew instantly where I would put myself. And that was running on a beach, in the wind, with some good music in, but just being really connected to the elements. And the reason they asked this question was because they were trying to help you understand what are the things that you need to get yourself in that place where you feel you can just take on the world. And so I know now, if I've got to do something to take myself into that space, I need to be outside, I need to be connected with the elements, and I need to be doing something physical. And if I can give myself that, I know even after half an hour, I will be in a much better place. And I will start to move back to being that best version of myself.
Interesting. I mean, immediately as you mentioned the word beach,
yeah,
I'm thinking cocktail, sun lounger. I'm not thinking about rain. I'm certainly not thinking about running. But it's whatever that place is for you.
Yeah, but I think it's really important to work out what it is you need for your own health mental, because the job we do is tough enough at all times. And we often forget we've got to invest in us as human beings. And I think being able to work out what you need as that leveler when you need it, or that thing that brings you back to being the human and not the workaholic or the robot, or that just mouse running around the hamster. Really, really important. And I think if anyone hasn't worked that out for themselves, I would advise that would be an important step to take.
No, it's a really good point. And finally, I mean, I'm, you know, looking at doing some research on you and knowing you as a person, you know, this thing that you've got in you to elevate other people. And I think you mentioned it, you know, just before, in terms of, you know, how do you make yourself feel, you know, good about yourself, and often that's linked to what you do for other people. I mean, I know that you've done quite a lot of work, you know, in your trusteeship. You've worked on various projects with young people, focusing on their careers. So I'd like to finish off with your best tip for making the world a better place.
Okay.
I did prep you for this, so I'm expecting a great answer.
Be nice. No, okay.
Be nice.
Curious.
I love that.
Seek to understand, be curious, and understand before you judge. I think for me, a mantra I would hang my hat on.
Wise words. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you a bit more, and I've loved interviewing you. I hope I did you proud, and I've made the most of the opportunity. I must have done a good job, because we haven't had any questions.
Your questions were great, Jo, as always.
But yeah, no, it's been
LinkedIn, or ask me any questions outside of this. I'm really happy to engage with LinkedIn, and please just reach out. One needs to.